Josh, you were talking about the Zooms. We're fixing to kick off. I'm waiting just a few minutes because several are entering right now. You were talking about the Zooms and, that you have the zombie apocalypse. Now you have the zombie. We've got it going right. I think our participants have kind of leveled out. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Good morning. My name is Missy Wally, and I am the Director of Special Projects here at the Department of Ed, or the Division of Elementary and Secondary Ed. So I appreciate all of you joining us this morning for our webinar. We have another webinar next week, and it's going to be a focus on RTI. So I hope you can join us on that one as well. A commissioner's memo will go out about that one today, just because I didn't want to confuse the two. That will be next, the 13th, I think from 10 to 11. But like I said, it will be on RTI. We are going to get started. A few times we are fortunate enough to where we just put teams together and they just naturally fit, where you've got an elementary team, a junior high team, and a high school team. And today's one of those days, so that's exciting. So I'm going to welcome and introduce the presenters, but Stephen, if you'll go to the next slide. All right, so these three members that are presenting today are part of our statewide guiding coalition. Our statewide guiding coalition was formed in the summer of last year, and the mission has changed. We've revisited that mission to where our mission now, before it was just to how do we attack that unfinished learning, and now our mission is to provide the support and guidance for Arkansas educators in developing, leading, and sustaining a statewide professional learning community. Our vision is to be a high-functioning collaborative team that plays an integral part in Arkansas, leading the nation in student-focused education. And I make sure that I put our mission and vision at the beginning of each one of our presentations, because I do think it's really important that we all know that where we're headed in this journey. And we want to share the work. And when you're exposed to this work and you're this passionate about it, we want that platform to share it, and we want everybody to have access to it. The goals of the coalition is implementing and spreading professional learning communities throughout schools and districts. So here you have a webinar, and that's the purpose of this. It's meeting one of our goals, building collaborative teacher and administrator teams. We just kicked that off last week, I believe, where we are setting statewide collaborative teacher teams. So if you don't know about that, just email me and I'll give you more information on that. Also supporting and developing and growing professional learning communities through modeling and observations on site and visiting other schools. You have an opportunity to visit these project schools. There's a Google form survey that is located on the professional learning communities page on the website, where you can click on that form and you can fill out that form and let us know exactly what you're looking for, whether it's SMART goals, RTI, common formative assessments, and we can connect you with the school, and you can go visit that school and learn more about that topic. Also partnering model PLC schools with other schools. So I think we all learn best when we have a practitioner sitting right there with us. And that's the purpose of that, partnering those PLC schools. And then making sure that we celebrate. We have a lot of good things going on, and making sure that we celebrate those. I put together a list today for the State Board of Education meeting that's going on today. And it was just an overall list of who has certified as a model PLC school, who has certified as a highly effective schools, or accredited as a highly effective schools. And then we have high reliability school certification, and then our high reliability teacher certification. And we've got quite a list, so it's very impressive. So when we put it all on paper, makes you proud. So Stephen, if you'll go to that next slide. And just a little bit of a connection, the High Reliability Schools Framework. I don't want you to think that that's a separate initiative. That is one initiative, and PLC fits right into that framework. So the High Reliability Schools is a school improvement framework. And if you can see on level 1, it provides a safe, supportive, and a collaborative culture. Those collaborative teacher teams, which is what's level 1, and you can see in your HRS framework. Level 2 is effective teaching in every classroom. That's the individual teacher. What strategies are they using? How's their classroom management? Are the students receiving high quality instruction? And level 3 is the guaranteed Bible curriculum. really level 2 and 3. I've got level 3 highlighted in red, but really level 2 and 3 will be addressed through the SMART goals today. Is setting those goals of where we want our students to do. And you can do that with an individual classroom, or you can do that with your Guaranteed Bible curriculum in your collaborative teams to make sure that every student's having access and to the high level of learning, ensuring high levels of learning for all students. How about I put it in that PLC wording? Level 4, standards reference reporting. We have a few schools who are trying that standards-based grading and getting to that point. And then level 5, competency-based education. Don't have many schools in the state in competency-based, but I think we have some who are working towards that direction. So that's exciting to hear. Let me introduce you to your presenters, and then I'm going to turn it over to them. We have Dr. Carrie, you can go to the next slide too, Stephen. We have Dr. Carrie Rathburn from Northside High School, which is in the Fort Smith School District, also a cohort 4 school and a model PLC school. Dr. Josh Ray, who's with East Point Elementary and Greenwood School District in cohort 2, and a model PLC school. And then we have Mr. Mike Wells with Clinton Junior High with Clinton School District. Very brave to get on here because he's with cohort 4 and this is his first year in the project and will soon be a model school because we're counting on it. Welcome to all 3 of them, and thank you so much for taking this time and presenting to the educators across Arkansas. So I'm going to kick it off to Dr. Rathburn and let y'all take it from there.
Thank you, Missy. Thanks to everyone for joining with us today, and we're going to talk about SMART goals and answer any questions that you may have. But we always want to start with, the 4 pillars, because everything is based around the 4 pillars of collaborative teams with our professional learning communities. And if you are not familiar with the 4 pillars, I'm going to just briefly talk about them. But this is where you're going to start with everything. This is your foundation for everything that you do with a professional learning community. So you're going to look at your mission. You're going to have a shared mission. Why do we exist? Why are we here? What are we here for? Which is then going to go into your shared vision. Where do we want to go? What do we need to become? And what is our future? What does that look like? Then the next thing you do is your collective commitments. The commitments are one of my favorites because that's going to tell you what do we have to do to get to our mission and vision? What are the things that we say that we are going to commit to, that we are promising that we are going to stick with and make sure that we are doing every day to accomplish our mission and vision. But today, the next thing we're going to, the reason why we're here today is about our shared goals and how do we get there. So the goal purpose for your PLC is making sure that you are held accountable for your mission, vision, and your collective commitments. And your goals are, what are the steps that you have to take and when are we going to take them? And then how are we going to know when we get there? So Stephen, you can go to the next slide. So how do they relate to your school's mission and vision? And you can see on the slide, it's just establishing those learning goals. And I know Mike's going to talk about the difference between teaching and learning goals in a little bit, but your SMART goals are how you are going to make sure, like I say, that you're getting to your school's vision and mission. You're going to learn together. That's the part of that collaboration where we're working together to accomplish our goals and what we say that we want to do, and then trying to find different ways to meet those goals. And with the COVID year, we've definitely had to come up with different ways to figure out how we're going to meet our goals this year, because maybe what you thought you planned on, last fall has changed a lot. I know ours has, and we've had to rethink our practices, our current practices, but we still have our goal. We're not going to let go of our goal, but we have to think about how we're going to do things differently to make sure we're still achieving our goals. And then you're going to put that learning into action. And, what I consider our PLC Bible is the Learning by Doing book. And it's exactly what it says. You learn by doing. And that's what you do with a goal is you're going to try it, and then you're going to learn by doing, and you're going to put that learning into action. And again, just like we've had to do with the COVID year, you may have to stop and pivot a little bit, but you're still focusing on that goal and what you want to accomplish. Part of the goal, you're going to gather evidence. You need to figure out, okay, what do I need to reach this goal? And then how will I know when I get there? And what does that look like? But you also need to celebrate along the way. And this is the part, and I'll just be totally honest and transparent. I forget to celebrate because I think we as leaders get so fast and furious going, and we forget to stop and celebrate the small things. So even if you have a big goal that is going to take you a whole year to do, you can stop and celebrate, baby steps along the way. And then once you've reached your goal, you're going to start the process all over again, and you're going to create new goals. So you're never stopping the process. You're always, it's a cyclical event. So you're making one goal and you're accomplishing that goal, and then you're going to the next one. Okay, Stephen, the next slide. So how do we begin? Where are we going to start with this? Well, you're going to start with looking at the big picture. So what are your district's goals? What does your district say, and how can you align your goal with your district? And then you're going to break it down to your school goals. And then you're going to get with your leadership team and your guiding coalition, and you're going to look for those goals in there. And then your team may have goals. So you can even break that down further. And like in a high school, each one of my departments has their own goal, but it's all based off of the school goal, which is based off of our district goal. So it all is sequential in nature. You're going to look for trends in your data. And of course, we are a data driven, that's what we do. And so you're going to look for the gaps. You're going to look for areas that you need to improve and where you need to grow. And of course, we're always focused on that student learning. How are we going to increase student achievement? Where do we need to go? And again, there's that celebration, because that celebration is such a key component in making sure that your team stays, that everything stays relevant, that you keep your eye on the prize, and that you are continuing to build that collaborative culture in your building. And then again, once you do that, you're going to look for new areas of growth and places that you have other areas of improvement, and you're going to set new goals. Stephen?
Okay, I'm going to jump in at this point and talk just a little bit about what SMART goals are. And to kick this off, many of you understand the acronym, but I want to take a second to talk about what they're not. And I think the best way to do that is to tell you our story, and just to be really transparent with you. As Missy said earlier, East Point Elementary in Greenwood, where I have the pleasure of working, we were one of the cohort 2 schools. And the reason we applied to become a cohort school is we had things in our building that we wanted to change on behalf of our kids. And so, as Carrie referenced earlier, the book's called Learning by Doing. So my mindset was, let's get to work. And SMART goals, just like the other 4 pillars for me, were these boxes to check. And I remember very intentionally thinking, let's get through this fluffy garbage so I can get to essential standards and formative assessments and the things that are actually going to make a difference for kids. And if I see my colleagues smile as I say that, because I think for most of us, we're in this business because we want to help kids. And we all have common experiences around missions and visions. And if you're like me, sometimes they're not good experiences. They were things that weren't real meaningful. And they were things that we did to check a box. And then we went to the poster printer and printed something really colorful, hung it up around our school, and never talked about it again. So I think the most important thing I would say is you can address adult behavior on the front end when you change your culture, or you can address it while you're trying to change your culture. And the sooner you can have these conversations, and the sooner you can put things in place where, just like Carrie said, we can know how we're going to behave, we can practice those behaviors, and we can celebrate the little wins along the way. The quicker you get to that being more meaningful, the sooner your adults are going to feel like what they're doing is making a difference. Because I want to be honest with you, part of becoming a PLC is adult change, that we shift adult behaviors to make a difference for student learning. And the data is not going to happen in a month, and it might not even happen in a year. And so you have to build within your staff, within the adults in your building, a culture that what we're doing matters and these wins matter enough to us. And then the student data will come on the other end of that. So you see the 5 pieces to the acronym. And what I would say about specifically the goals is they're only as meaningful as your use of them. So if you make a goal and you never return to it, then it's not something that's going to impact your practice. It's not going to impact the adults in your building, and it's never going to make it down the line to student learning. So as we talk about some of these things, what that meant for us was we put our team SMART goals on our agendas for collaborative teams. We came back at the end of every single unit and said, let's stop. We said, this is an essential standard. We said that all kids have to know this. How does this relate to our SMART goals? Have we made progress towards that? Do we need to adjust? So as we have this conversation today, no, you can't build a pretty enough SMART goal to change adult behavior and student learning if you don't come back to it. And this year, especially in COVID, our SMART goals have changed 4 times over the course of the year as we've started to understand more and more what attainable looks like and the time that we had to achieve those things. All right, Stephen, next slide, please, sir. So let's start with strategic, the S in SMART goals. And this is not a reach for anybody. I think that you can understand where this is coming from, but we want very, very specific outcomes. And we want this to be something that we understand on the beginning, that we can build consensus around as a team, and that there's not a misconception around what we're hoping to accomplish. Some of our goals in the beginning were to increase student learning. Well, is that 1%? Is that 2%? Is that 40%? I remember when we first started building some of our goals, we said, well, we said we want to ensure high levels of learning for every kid. So we're going to go from 62% of students that met the benchmark on our ACT Aspire to 100%, because we have to get them all right. And so knowing specifically what you're trying to accomplish and focusing on that, building consensus together, is really important, because you can make bad goals that actually get in the way of your progress if you're not intentional about what you want to accomplish and how you're going to accomplish it. So you can see on here that the second bullet is something that I want to take a second to highlight. Your goals should have adult behaviors behind the scenes. And here's what I mean by that. We're going to write SMART goals focused on student learning, but as leaders in the building, we should have an idea of what that's going to require of our adults to accomplish what we want for our students. So for instance, we at East Point have spent a lot of time building collective responsibility for all of our students. It doesn't matter if you're identified for special education services, if you have characteristics of dyslexia. If you are in the 2nd grade and you go to our school, every 2nd grade teacher owns your responsibility. So if we're going to do that, we need to make sure that we write a goal that every 2nd grade teacher is measuring together, accessing together, that we're not looking at Josh's class, Mike's class, Carrie's class, that we're looking at the 2nd grade team together. So when we're being strategic about these goals, we need to think about the things that we want our adults to be doing, as well as the results that we want from our students. Next slide. All right, Mike, I think this is you, isn't it, sir?
I was going to jump on at Attainable, but I can jump on at Measurable. I'm good. So obviously on Measurable, that's going to be a pretty easy one to discuss there. Measurable just means we have to have data behind it. Okay, we need to know what our goal is. We need to be able to measure it somehow, whether that is so many kids passing an ACT Aspire test, whether that is an understanding that we're going to increase by a certain amount of growth. So anyway, I think that one speaks for itself. Next slide, please. I'll go on to Attainable. Okay, so Attainable is where we Attainable is where we start to get. Sorry, I was going to make sure that wasn't my radio.
No, that was me. I was going to interrupt and just say along the way, if you have questions, if y'all will put those in the chat box too, because I meant to say that at the very beginning and I was going to interrupt in between. So I'm sorry. Keep going.
Okay, so Attainable is where we start to have a little breakdown in goals. And I'm going to say this is my experience. You know, as a first year cohort 4, we were dabbling in some PLC. We were kind of playing PLC, but man, when Solution Tree comes in, you're about to be married to it. And boy, it has been a learning experience. So Attainable, we're going to talk about that, and I'm going to tell you a little bit of my story. Okay, these goals need to be realistic. And my personal story on this is, for 5-6 years, I've tracked our ACT Aspire scores. And I mean, I've done it with our staff, and part of the reason we applied to be a PLC school is we were stagnant. I'm going to take our 7th grade math scores, for example. In 2019, at the beginning of the year with my teachers, I said, we're going to make a 65% on our ACT Aspire this year, plus or minus 5 to be average, you know. And so when we came in and our 2019 scores came in at the end of the year, we were exactly 65%. And everybody's like, how did you know that? I said, I watched a 5-year data trend. I could tell you every single score we had was stuck here. So 2020, we take our midterms, we're about 56%. We got some growth to go. We added a new math program, and then COVID hits, okay? And so COVID hits, we come in this year and we started a new iReady test. We took our first test at the fall, and all of a sudden 17% of our kids were on grade level. And 37% were 1 grade below, and 46% were 2 grade levels behind. Now I know where our school is. We're sitting at 65%. Panic sets in. I'm starting to question the iReady test. What do I do? And I've got a solution tree rep saying, okay, what's your goal? And I'm going, well, our goal is to at least be back to that 65%. And she said, now we're looking at your recent data point. That's your baseline, Mike. Your baseline is no longer that ACT Aspire score back in 2019. Your reality now is this iReady score. And so here we are at our 17%, and I'm wondering what we're going to do. Now, of course, our goals, they've got to be higher than the previous data point. So we're looking back at that iReady test, and we said our goal is 36%. That's heartbreaking to me when our school is 65% for a 5-year trend, and we're looking at 36, and that's all Kim Bailey is going to let me go. If you can go on to the next slide. And I'm like, okay, so where's that next slide? There we go. So I'm asking her, why 36%? How do I decide what is an attainable score? And she said, well, you need to have a formula. And so, because we don't need to pick a number out of thin air. You know, we're at 17%, I'm going to go up to 48. How did I get that number? So the way she explained this to me, and I think this is a great start, where if you don't know a way to set a number goal, we started with our 17% on grade level right now. And her goal was to take us move half of those kids on the bubble. So you can take that 0.5, and I said we had 37% of kids that were 1 grade level below. And if we can move half of those kids on the bubble back to grade level, that's 18.5%. Add those two together, and our realistic attainable SMART goal for this year was 35.5. She wanted 35. I convinced her to let me round up to 36 because I still want that 65%. The other thing about Attainable that I just want to mention in here is always make it realistic and personal. And, you know, they mentioned that we are a junior high, but I'm also different on this panel. I'm a small school, and we have 100 kids per grade on average every year. So to us, when we start talking percentage points, it's realistic to us because 1 kid is 1 percentage point. So when we had that goal of those 18 bubble kids to move, we looked at our data wall, which we do with pictures of kids and everything, and we put them up there, and we brought our math team in, and we said, which 18 kids on this bubble can you reach and can you move? And making it personal to the teachers, I think, makes it also seem a lot more attainable in the end. We're going to go on to the next slide, which is results oriented. And this was another one that I felt strongly when we were talking about what slides we were going to do between the panelists. I really wanted results oriented because this was a mistake that even I myself made on making goals on EdReflect or Bloomboard with my own personal goals. But in SMART goals, you really have to be results oriented. And by results oriented, we have to focus on student learning. That's the results we're wanting. We're not talking about teacher behavior. Those are behind the scenes, as Josh said. But every SMART goal you need to write has to have a student learning target in the middle of it. Okay. So again, we're referring back to that measurable thing that we talked about earlier. This is exactly what we're measuring. We are looking at how much of our planning and how much of our instruction was effective in the end on reaching this specific essential standard or even school-wide goal. Okay, so on the next slide, I said that I wanted to talk about S.M.A.R.T goals and SMART goals. And I'm not sure if I picked this up at a PLC conference or if I picked this up in Master Principle or where it came from originally. But so many times, and myself included, I started to write these S.M.A.T goals. So instead of student results oriented, I made them teacher oriented. Okay, so like we'll have a goal. Sometimes somebody will say our 7th grade science team is going to incorporate at least 3 argument-driven inquiry lessons by the end of the first semester. That's an example that I have actually seen our staff try to do. Now, that's 80% correct on a SMART goal because it is strategic, right? It's very clearly we want that good teaching in our school. It is measurable because, you know, we have 3. We're doing 3 of something. Did we get 2? No, we didn't do it. That's very attainable. I would hope they're at least doing 3 of those during the first semester because they're good instruction. It's time bound because we got the first semester, but what we don't have, it's not student result oriented, but it focused all on the teacher actions. So that's what we're always talking about when we say, no, that's not a SMART goal, that's a S.M.A.T goal. You put the teacher right in the middle of your goal right there. Okay, next slide. And this one, I think we don't have to talk about time bound too much. Again, that's kind of like measurable. That's obvious. We need to set a time that these goals are going to wrap up. And the only thing that I can say about them is if we set too long of a goal, it can result in a loss of focus. And I'm going to even say that with our cohort that we're doing right now, or our work with Kim Bailey, when we set that goal by the end of the year to get our students to, you know, the 36%, that's almost too long. I really wish we would have gone back in and said, here's our goal for the next iReady test. Here is our goal, you know, for each interim assessment. So, I mean, you can do them, set them semester, quarterly. I would never go over 1 year, in my opinion, for a SMART goal because you just tend to lose. And then, man, if you get into the rare air of really doing this right, where your teams are setting those SMART goals for each unit. You know, our 2nd grade team is working on this, and here's where we're going to get in 3 weeks worth of time. Okay. So the next slide, each of us was asked to do an example of a SMART goal. And so I'm going to let whoever did number 1 jump back on and talk about theirs.
Okay, and I'm going to piggyback on what you said, Mike, about setting those different kinds of goals, because I do think that that's very important. And that goes back into that celebration, because if you don't set those benchmark goals along the way, you do tend to, you get mired down, and it, you know, you may not, you lose your focus pretty quick. So I totally agree with you on that. But this was a year-long goal, though, that I gave, and this was a big goal for us. Our graduation rate has been coming up every year. And as a high school, you know, that's our biggest thing, is that we're really trying to get those seniors graduated and making sure that we are held accountable for that. And so you can see that we set this goal for this school year. We're going to have a 95% or higher graduation rate. So we've given ourselves, you know, what the goal is. We've given ourselves a time. We've measured it with the 95% or higher. And then we have shown our evidence on there. And what I like about this goal is this is a school goal, but yet every department at Northside can tie into what they do to this goal. So each team, each department at Northside took this goal and said, okay, what can I do in English to ensure that I can help with this school goal? Even, you know, in fine arts, what can I do in band or choir? You know, what activity, what evidence will I produce, have my students produce to help us reach this school goal? And so each department took this goal and then made a goal off of that goal. So that's my example for our school, one of our SMART goals.
Yeah, and I think that's an excellent point, that you said you do have your overarching school goal, and then your teams can break down smaller goals that reach the overarching target. Since I had mentioned it earlier, I thought that I should do a team goal instead. So, you know, this is a short example that maybe the English department might have said. By the end of our 3-week morphology unit on prefixes, like how I made that all timely to science of reading and all, 85% of our students will be able to correctly identify at least 8 out of 10 words as having either a Greek or Latin prefix on our common formative assessment. So again, you can see on ours, we definitely have, it's strategic to the science of reading. We have our measurements of how many students and what they're going to have on the assessment. It's I'm going to say it's attainable. I mean, it may not be. I may have set the bar a little high, but there it is. It's definitely student results oriented. And we have our time bound of our 3-week unit. And then just to go back to the whole overarching pillars of the PLC process. So let's say even we meet our goal with these 85% of our kids. Of course, at that point, that's where we take our 15 and we start putting them back into tier 2 remediation programs. Next slide for Josh, please.
All right, so we actually didn't do this on purpose, but I think it's set up really perfectly. So you see the large umbrella goal from Carrie's perspective, and then you see Mike at the micro level with the teams of looking at a unit by unit. And so this is a goal that we set that is a little bit more grade level specific, and it might be what I might consider the middle of those two goals, that it wasn't a large umbrella goal. It wasn't something that we were going to know whether we hit in 3 weeks, but it was specific to our interim assessment. And we wrote this with a couple of things in mind. And so I want to go back to something that I said earlier. If you read this goal for a second, I want you to try to imagine a couple of things that we were trying to address about our school. There's student data in there, and you can see that very clearly what we're trying to accomplish for our kids. But if you said that maybe our school is not reaching enough students who are identified for special education services, you're exactly right. And if you said that our school wanted to start the year with a sense of urgency because we were going to be measuring our progress on our October ACT interim, you would be right. Those were the two behind the scenes goals that we were thinking from adult behavior perspective that we wove into what we were trying to accomplish for our students. So at East Point, 3rd and 4th grade kids are broken across different classes that are departmentalized, and they're shared among a team of teachers. And our students that are identified for special education services are served alongside their peers in an integrated model with a paraprofessional in the classroom. But what part of the culture that was embedded in our school that we needed to address was that those students who had been identified were the sole responsibility of the paraprofessional and the teacher who taught that integrated class. So part of the reason we made this a goal we were checking in on week by week and month by month was we as a 3rd grade team, we as a 4th grade team, all of a sudden we're taking the time to check where are our identified students. And then if I'm serving those students in tier 2, if they have some skills and we've broken them down among our team and I don't normally teach them, do I know that they're a student that we're really intentionally watching to check their progress? And then if we're going to measure this in October, we don't have time for the first 2 weeks of school to teach procedures and to get fluffy and to make everybody feel good. We got to start learning and moving in a hurry because we lost 4th quarter last year and we've got to get to work. So when you're designing these goals, it's important that you know some of the things that you want to accomplish around the goal. And the other thing that I want to mention specific to this goal is I said consensus earlier, and I think it's really important that if you're an administrator, if you're a leader, you have voice in developing that goal, but you can't take a goal to your team and say, we're going to do this. My wife is skinny, athletic, disciplined, and I'm none of those things. So if my wife set a goal for how much weight I was going to lose, it would not be an encouragement to me. It would probably discourage me and make me feel like a worthless person. But if I decided I need to do this to make myself feel better, and this will make me enjoy this or this better, then I have a personal attachment to that goal. So when we develop these goals, I was part of that conversation with our teams, but I was a voice in the room. This wasn't something that I took to our 3rd grade team or to our 4th grade team and said, we need to do this. I helped to establish that sense of urgency around identified kids, but it wasn't do this or we didn't meet our goal. And I think that's a really important conversation as well. Next slide, please, sir.
Okay, this is a goal template that is just one of the reproducibles that you can find on the Solution Tree website. And I would encourage you to just really scour that website and get all of the freebies that you can, but you can also use the QR code. But this is a really good template just to get going. It tells you step by step what you can do. And we just wanted to share this with you as just an extra resource if you are not sure on how to get started. Next slide. And of course, I mentioned this book. Everything that we've talked about today, you will find in this book. In fact, it's almost verbatim in several places. But this is the Bible. This is the PLC Bible, and this is what you need. And everything that we do, we turn to this book. And I'm sure that Josh and Mike do as well. But I know at Northside we have this book handy, and we are referring to this all the time. So if you are not familiar with this book or you don't have a copy, I would recommend this, that you get one as soon as possible. And I think the last slide is our contact information.
I want to jump back. There was a question in the question and answer box.
Okay.
And I don't know if we need to go back to the slide 16, but I believe it was referring to our goal about 85% of our students will be able to identify. And the question was, we've been taught that it should be 100% of our students. Every student 100% on essential standards should be showing proficiency. And so just so everybody can hear and see the answer, I think we all agree that 100% proficiency is the ultimate goal. I did want to point out that what we did on that one is that is after our common formative assessment, and the key word there being formative, because we taught and we're doing that smaller check along the way before the summative. So again, you know, just kind of those key words, we're hoping for 85% so we can do our interventions to eventually try for that 100% guaranteed for all.
Yeah, Mike, I want to jump in on that too, because I think that's a really great question. And that's something that we've worked through in our school. When we lost our summative assessments last year as part of COVID, then we had to really intentionally look deeper into what we were doing day by day in those formative assessments. And so we had the same question as we started writing team level goals. We said, well, we said these things are essential and that every kid needs them. But what if we get to the end of a unit and we've only, you know, reached 85%? Can we write a goal that 85% of our kids will be there at the end of the unit? And we decided to do that based off of data that we had last year. And the other thing we did alongside that was we wrote the pacing of our essential standards in a way that new instruction is actually wrapping up right now in our school. So we don't have lots of essential standards, especially, that have yet to be taught. So what we'll do at East Point is from the middle of April till June the 3rd, which is our last day of school, we will go back to where we've been tracking our students across those essential standards and say, we were at 85, now we're at 89. We still have these 10 kids that aren't there. We've got 6 weeks. Let's go back and get those kids, get those kids, get those kids. And that gives us a chance to kind of double down on our RTI process on the things that we said are essential. I think it's important that we keep the machine moving forward and know that when we say 100% of our kids are going to master essential standards, we have till the last minute of the last school day to get those kids across the line. But it's also good that we track where the kids are unit by unit, so we know along the way throughout the year where they are. And then the other piece of that is when we do tier 2 intervention and we're providing kids with extra time on skills they might have been missing, we've learned that taking that data from that and adding that progress monitoring back to what we had from the unit helps keep that data fresh for us. So in April, we're not looking at data that we haven't considered since September, because those skills are part of our tier 2 intervention time and we know where those kids are throughout the course of the year. I hope that helps to answer that too.
And I think that's something that's so exciting about what's going on in our state is the fact that the more schools that are doing the PLC process, the more we are all more consistent with our protocols and how we are having these interventions for these students. Because like Josh said, it's all about your RTI. And the more kids that we can get out of tier 3 and, you know, keep pushing in and keeping them on in tier 1, and then with a little bit of tier 2, eventually, the faster we're going to get that 100%.
I agree. Hey, Stephen, there is a request to go back to those examples. Can you flip back to slide 16?
While you're going back to slide 16, there's another question in the Q&A. If someone wants to take that one, it says, our understanding essential standards are identified, a common formative assessment given, and guaranteed in interventions with the SMART goals aligned. Somebody want to address that?
Here, I'll take a crack at that first. So each one of those could be a presentation on its own, if I'm just being honest. What we found first at East Point was that we had way too many essential standards, and COVID was a great lever for us to go back and almost kind of say, what are our essentials? This is a year that we can't guarantee 25 essential standards, which we didn't have that many. But if you have too many things that you can't guarantee, then your language isn't very good in the first place. So I would say going into next year, to start with, if you have identified those essential standards, it's good to know what those things are before you ever pace out your year. So we pace our year around essential standards. So that way we know our units, our instruction, and then our intervention are tied to the pacing of those essential standards. And then again, we allow ourselves time at the end to circle back around to our RTI process for kids who have not mastered those things yet, because we end initial instruction somewhere around this time, and we have until the last minute of the last day to get them there. Then we build common formative assessments and end of unit assessments before we ever start teaching. And the reason that we do that is we want to make sure as teacher teams that we know where every single kid is supposed to be before we start teaching. We want our teachers to teach to their tests they create. We don't teach to ACT Aspire or NWEA or anything like that. But if we say this is what the bar is for mastery, we want to start teaching that bar from the very first time the kids know it. So it's really important for us that we start with the essential standard. We know where it is in the course of the year. Then we determine where the bar is. We all understand as a group, we make the assessment, and then we practice that with our kids. And then once we've done that and we get to the formative assessment, that piece of information that we have mid-instruction that tells us as teachers, either our kids are on track to where we want them to be or they're not, and then tells us which students are missing the skills. Then at that point, we assign kids by skill-specific tier 2 groups to allow them extra practice mid-unit during the instruction to help them make sure that we are meeting those goals at the end of each unit. And then some students aren't going to get it even with tier 2. And those are the kids that are getting tier 3 targeted remediation, or they get more and more and more practice through their tier 2 time. And then those are the kids we really focus in on at this time of year to make sure we get them across that line going into the next school year. I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, I don't think either one of us could have said that much better, Josh.
So we have, and I just wanted to address, and if there are any other questions, if you can put them in the Q&A, and we'll get those answered. But I just wanted to let you know, we do have a group of teacher candidates on here from Arkansas Tech. So if there's anything that you would like to say to the teacher candidates to say, hey, this is what I would love when I'm hiring a teacher candidate to come into a PLC culture. And whoever wants to go first.
I'll go first, and it's not going to be about PLC culture. It's going to be about I need math and science teachers, so that's my big plug.
That'll work.
But no, but seriously, to what Missy's saying, we always, it's part of my interview process is to talk about professional learning communities. And I'm very transparent about, that's who we are at Northside, and that's who we're looking for. But, we're looking for those teachers that are collaborative, that, are team players, but that are also excited to share what they've learned. And I think that you, as a young teacher coming right out of college, you have all these fresh ideas that we want to learn from. And that's what I'm looking for.
Absolutely. I agree with you. First of all, I am fortunate to have very little turnover at our school. And I like to say that that's part of the culture that we've built, that people come here and they want to stay. So I'm thankful for that. But if I ever do have openings, I would love to have some fresh new ideas in the building. I think what Carrie said, the exact same thing. So many times I'm looking for a teacher that will be able to work as a team, who realizes that they still, even coming out of college, they don't have all the answers, that are willing to listen to advice, that are willing to be observed and have actionable feedback given to them. But I think, like Carrie said, I'm also looking for that teacher that is not afraid to step up and, I don't want to say defend a kid, but do what's right for kids, to some of our veteran teachers also. So many times our veteran teachers are the ones that have, instead of 25 years experience, sometimes they have 1 year of experience 25 times. And for a young teacher, sometimes they get into those meetings and they'll be in there with, teachers that have been there forever, and they think they are the end all be all. And just kind of cower down and be afraid to step up. And there's an art to being able to get your opinion in there and be collaborative with also not going overboard. But I'm looking for the teacher that has their convictions solidly in place and will be able to share those convictions with the older teachers also.
Yeah, I think what I would add to that is we can teach you skills. It's much harder to change your disposition. And so we're talking about one of the 4 pillars, and we're talking about adult learning, adult behavior. And if you've ever had the pleasure of hearing Anthony Muhammad before, he references the quote that culture eats structure for breakfast. And what he means by that is the beliefs, the mindset, and the behaviors of the adults are so much harder to change than your classroom management skills, the start of the lesson, the resources that we're using. So for the 3 of us, we all have the privilege of leading professional learning communities, which means that we're going to set a new teacher up to learn from experienced educators. But we don't want someone who doesn't want to learn, who's not willing to share, who isn't hungry to get better, who is afraid to share their opinion. So when you're a new teacher, I think that's the most valuable thing that you have. Come in and present yourself as a learner, as someone who wants to grow, as someone who wants to find someone to make them better, because the dispositions will set you up to be successful. In each of our schools, we have places where we can give you the skills. You can learn those quickly, but who you are as a person is what we're looking for. And we even use these 4 pillars at East Point. If we hire you to come to our school, they are contractual agreements of you being part of the culture of our building. We expect that you will behave this way, believe these things, and function in a way that lines up with these. So if you are applying for a job that's a PLC, I would know what their mission, what their vision, what their collective commitments are, because that's what they're going to be looking for in a person to bring into their school.
Y'all might have just recruited some teachers. Who knows? That it's exciting that they're on here. So I just want to say thank y'all for joining us. It's not very often that we get the teacher prep candidates on here. So I appreciate Arkansas Tech for doing that.
Hey, Ms. Wally, I want to say also before that, and I want to say thank you for all of you guys for coming into the profession. That's huge, where we always talk about teacher shortage. Thank you for making a commitment to being a teacher, to all the candidates that are watching.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Any other questions? What I didn't say at the beginning that I normally say at the beginning, this was recorded. It will be uploaded on the PLC page of the DESE website. And then also the PowerPoint will be as well. So the contact information for these leaders will also be on that page. So if you need to contact them, they will definitely answer any questions that you have. And I believe Josh has just put in his number. So if you want to call. Any of us are willing. And that's what's so great about the schools is it's not just a collaboration within the schools, it's a collaboration within the state. And I think our mission is to ensure high levels of learning for all students in the state of Arkansas. So it's an exciting journey that we are taking together, and we would love to work with anybody in moving forward. So I don't see any questions, but as I put into the commissioner's memo, we will stay here just a moment to answer any questions. And then just to let you know, April the 13th, we have another webinar with some other administrators on RTI, but we also have Mike Mattis coming up, who will be presenting on Tier 1. He's presenting 3 days, first day on Tier 1, second day on Tier 2, and the third day on Tier 3. If you want to know those dates, go to the PLC page, and those dates will be on the events page. And it's also in the ESC Works. I think the first one is at the end of April, and the Tier 2 and Tier 3 are in May. All right. So thank y'all. Have a great afternoon. And if we will stay on for panelists, if you'll stay on for just a few minutes in case we have any questions. But the rest of you have a wonderful day.